still, you just returned for your trip from Donbas, actually. You made a story about the family. Can you please, at the beginning, tell more what was the story about? What was the story you made in Donbas now, in this trip?
No, for me it was important to show because winter is the most harsh time, both for civilians and for those people who fight. And this I wanted to document with my camera.
Yeah, what was the story about? What was
the story was once about families, for example, who get teared away because there's now the front line. There are two sides also in the heads sometimes now of the people and in the hearts. But also it's very hard when, for example, your grandfather is on the Donetsk side and you are living in Avdiivka, then it's really hard to keep in contact. It's very complicated. So this is one story, and the other story was mainly also about showing how soldiers cope with the situation now in winter times with all the snow. And also this year a new book of mine will be published, and especially for this book I made a lot of pictures now at the front line in Hromadske.
Is there already a second trip to eastern Ukraine, to Donbas? Why do you do that? Why it is important for you to go there and show the story in Germany?
Because I think it's a very dangerous thing that in Western Europe this conflict is really forgotten. And for me it's really a shame that we have in Europe again a conflict. And for me it's not about showing who is responsible for it, who are the good and who are the bad guys. I just want to remember there's something really going wrong and we have a conflict again in Europe, and we have to bring it in the headlines again. That's why I went. Because now the mass media is gone. The mainstream media, they don't care so much anymore. And this is always when I start my work. When the other cameras are gone, I try to remember that there's something not okay.
How do people in Germany react for such stories about Donbas? Because you told that it's not in media anymore and people forgot these things. How do they react now?
Well, I can remember when I was traveling for my first trip, it was in October. I was sitting in a train and I had my helmet with me because I didn't took it I took it in hand luggage. And there was two young students from university sitting, like early 20s. And they asked me, where are you going with this helmet? And I said, well, I'm going to Donbas in East Ukraine. And they even didn't know that there's a conflict. And this was a very sad thing for me. And this is why I also did one story, for example, about a very young soldier who is 21 years old and already an officer and responsible for the life of his men, how he copes with the situation. And it's the same age, so hopefully I manage that they can identify and get more interested in this topic.
But after you publish this story, do you get any feedback? Many commentaries or letters, or how do people react after you publish these stories?
Well, yes, there's a lot of comments, of course, when it's on Spiegel Online. I'm working as a freelancer for them, and of course you get feedback. Sometimes you have also some extremist people, like pro-Russians, for example, who had just been annoyed that I was only on the Ukrainian side, for example. I get feedback, but I also get feedback from a lot of Germans who see, okay, we really didn't know that there's something going on, as they thought the issue is already settled, which is not, in my opinion. And also in my hometown, Bamberg, we have a quite lively Ukrainian community, and they like my story. But which is also interesting, the wife of a good friend of mine, she's Russian. So she's on the other side, say it like this, but also for her it was okay. And this is important for me because as a journalist, of course, I must stay neutral.
In Germany, well, as far as I know, society is not, let's say, solid on this question. And there's a big part of society that is loyal to Russia and thinks that in Ukraine is not the things as they are. You as a German, how will you describe how do people now, not only media but like ordinary people as well, how do they see this conflict? How do they see Ukrainians like in this conflict with Russia? How do they react?
Well, it's a tough question because for many people, they don't have so much the background knowledge, what is going on actually. And unfortunately, it's not really a topic anymore. And I think now in these times where we have a lot of conflict, and also in, for example, Syria, for example, which is pretty much in the headlines, the situation in Donbas gets more and more forgotten. But for me, even I'm neutral, I say when we have a time when borders are not respected anymore in Europe, it's a very, very dangerous thing. And personally, when I see the situation for Ukraine, it's getting harder and harder to find a way back to a peaceful living together. It will be not easy, even the conflict is settled.
You've been in many countries, in many conflict zones, in many wars. What was the most difficult for you as a reporter, as a documentary, filmmaker? What was the most important in times of war, when you see all these victims, when you see all these broken lives, when you see all the situation? What is the most difficult for you?
That you manage to keep your distance, because of course I'm feeling with the people, but also you must be able to close the door when you're at home, because if not, it's like a doctor when you're working in a hospital and you have a little child with cancer. Somehow you want to help this child, but somehow you must manage being at home, that you have your own life. That's sometimes not easy when you see a lot of sad things happen. What makes it very hard for me, because I feel very close to Ukraine, because I'm here for 10 years. I'm very often in this country. So of course that makes it very sad for me that something like Donbas is happening, especially because all the people you have to cope with a lot of challenges in their life, and now there's also a conflict up. That's very terrible for me. The most terrible thing I ever saw in my life, I was in a drought in Ethiopia, and I saw children dying because they didn't have enough to eat. And after this, for example, I stopped for 1 year traveling.
You stopped, and then you decided to...
I did only my job at home in Germany as a journalist for a regional newspaper. But I decided to stop traveling for 1 year, because when you continue like this, then I think it's also not good for your own.
Comparing to other conflicts, comparing to other wars you have seen, let's say in Balkans, in Gaza Strip, and in Donbas, what is difference, and what makes what is difference between Donbas and other conflicts? What makes it different for you? What is why it is special, or any other things?
Well, first maybe I say what's not different. I think every conflict is a loss of human lives, which makes for me never sense. And it makes never sense when you see people dying in a war or in a conflict. Donbas for me it's special because it's Europe, and it's a country, and it's in a country which is really close to my heart, and the people are close to my heart. That's why it's special for me. When I compare the conflict itself to other conflicts that have been, for example, in Somalia, that's a big difference, because there are no structured armies, for example, like you have now in Donbas. That's like you have militias who are more or less under control. But in general, war is always the same. It's the worst thing human beings can do to each other.
Some people say there's a concept of so-called hybrid war, that Russia is spreading hybrid war, but on the other hand, many journalists say that it's not hybrid when you see troops of soldiers and that are shooting to each other. In your opinion, is it hybrid, or is it something else you have seen before, or is it just another conflict? Or how would you describe this concept of hybrid war in Donbas?
Well, for me, for example, the difference is when I've been in Avdiivka, if it would have been in Bosnian war, for example, where I started my career, say it like this, from going to war and conflicts, the city would be already destroyed. At least because I think both sides see these people as their own people. These save the city. But for the people living there in this place, it's really a hard life. In my opinion, and sometimes when I speak with the people, I had sometimes the feeling they just can't believe what's going on. And also, I've never been in a city which is so silent like Avdiivka. It's like there are no sounds. It was very strange for me, but maybe that's only because I'm a little bit too sensitive when I was there. But if I call it a hybrid war, for me it's not so much thinking in this political dimension. For me it's really to be with the people and show how they suffer. And all the time they suffer. They had not the best life before, they had a lot of challenges, and now the things get even worse. And when I was there in October, I was at some old ladies living in a village behind the front lines. And more or less all the young people left, of course, because in this village there was no future anymore. There were only the old left behind. And most of them, they spent their childhood already in a war. And now it's the end of their days. They are old people. They are in winter of their lives, say it like this. And they have, again, a war, and they even don't understand what is it about.
You also made a project about a war in Ukraine, about these people with disabilities, about older people in Lviv, so like from different regions, about different people, and you tell them to Germans. Why it is important to tell about Ukrainian life to German people? You said Ukraine is forgotten now, but why it is, in your opinion, is important to keep it alive, let's say?
Because we are Europe. Huh? That's important for me, and we must understand each other. And I'm really very much European. It's not only about European Union. This is just put something border, say it like this. But I believe in the soul of Europe, and it can be only when we all accept it that we living in diversity. And this is what I believe in, and I believe in and I hope that one day we have really a big Europe, which only knows citizens and no borders anymore, and which is a Europe where everybody has a social, stable life, and we can manage that we live in peace. That's I'm dreaming about. And to do my little step, that's somehow I tell about Ukraine. And it was by fortune, or I don't know how to word, destiny, maybe I came so close to this country.
Another question, actually. You've been there in Donbas. You've seen ordinary people, like families, children, old people there. Based on your experience, how do you see the future of this, let's say, conflict situation? Like based on your experience with speaking with people, how do you see that? How can it be solved? Or like, if yes, how, or like in what case?
I think everything can be solved. That's what I believe in life. That's first of all, but well, I think it's as long as the situation continues like this, it will get harder and harder to find a good solution for everybody. Maybe the first solution is that the hardliners on both sides recognize that when a mother is crying that her son died at the front line, that's a respect on both sides. It's terrible for this mother. That's the first step towards peace. And I think the hardliners on both sides, they are far away to respect this. But for the ordinary people I met, when you're really in Avdiivka, most of them, they just want to have a situation that the situation ends. It's not much talking, so not so much talking to politics about with me. It was really that they just wish that there should be an end of the situation and they should have peace again.